There is a building in Agra, India, that has made people cry just by looking at it. That white marble, so pure it seems to glow from within. Perfect symmetry in every direction. A reflection so precise in the long water channel that you cannot tell where the building ends and the water begins. The Taj Mahal. Shah Jahan built it for his dead wife. He spent 22 years and the labor of 20,000 workers constructing her tomb. He reportedly planned to build an identical one in black marble for himself, across the river, connected by a silver bridge. He never got to finish it. His own son imprisoned him in a tower with a single window, a window with a view of the Taj Mahal. He spent the last 8 years of his life staring at the tomb he had built for the woman he loved. That is what the Mughal Empire was. Extraordinary beauty, extraordinary cruelty, and a story that shaped 1 billion people's world, whether they know it or not. The impossible BGI9G. The Mughal story begins not in India, but in Central Asia, in a small kingdom called Fergana, in modern Uzbekistan. A 12-year-old boy named Babur inherited a throne too small for his ambitions. Babur carried extraordinary blood. On his father's side, he descended from Timur the Great, the conqueror who had made Samarkand the most splendid city on earth. On his mother's side, from Genghis Khan, conquest was literally written into his ancestry. He spent years trying to recapture Samarkand, the city of his dreams. He failed. Again and again, he was driven out. By the time he was in his 30s, he had lost almost everything. His kingdom, his city, his dreams. So he turned south toward India. In 1526, Babur crossed into India with an army of 12,000 men. Waiting for him at the first battle of Panipat was Ibrahim Lodi, Sultan of Delhi, with an army of 100,000 soldiers and 100 war elephants. Babur had cannons. Ibrahim Lodi had never faced artillery before. The sound and fire sent his war elephants stampeding backward through his own army. Babur's disciplined cavalry swept around both flanks simultaneously. By sunset, Ibrahim Lodi was dead on the battlefield. The Mughal Empire had begun. Akbar the Chiarit Babur died 4 years after Panipat. His son Humayun spent most of his reign being chased out of India by an Afghan chieftain and surviving on the charity of the Persian Shah. The empire nearly died before it truly began. Then Humayun's son came to power. At 13 years old, his name was Akbar, and he would become arguably the greatest ruler in South Asian history. Akbar expanded the empire across most of the Indian subcontinent. But his military genius was not what made him extraordinary. It was his political philosophy. He ruled an empire of staggering diversity. Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Jains, Christians, Zoroastrians, dozens of languages, hundreds of cultural traditions. Every previous ruler had managed this diversity through force, taxing non-Muslims, suppressing local religions, imposing a single identity. Akbar tried something completely different. Tolerance. He married Hindu Rajput princesses and let them keep their religion. He abolished the jizya, the special tax on non-Muslims. He invited scholars of every faith to debate theology at his court. He created a new spiritual movement called Din-i-Ilahi, an attempt to find the truth common to all religions. He could not read or write, but he had one of the most extraordinary minds in the history of governance. He understood intuitively what takes most rulers a lifetime to learn, that diversity, managed with wisdom, is a strength. Under Akbar, the empire became wealthy, stable, and genuinely beloved by people of multiple faiths. He remains the standard against which every South Asian ruler has been measured ever since. The golden age. Under Akbar's descendants, the empire reached its cultural peak. Jahangir, Akbar's son, was a passionate naturalist and art collector who commissioned some of the most beautiful paintings in the history of the subcontinent. Then came Shah Jahan, and the building began. The Taj Mahal, the Red Fort in Delhi, the Jama Masjid Mosque, the Shalimar Gardens in Lahore. These were not just buildings. They were statements about wealth, about faith, about beauty, about what human hands could achieve when given unlimited resources and unlimited ambition. The Mughal court during Shah Jahan's reign was perhaps the most magnificent in the world. Poets competed for patronage. Musicians performed in jeweled halls. Persian was the language of culture. Gardens were designed as literal earthly paradise at its peak in the mid-1600s. The Mughal Empire's GDP was larger than that of all of Western Europe combined. 1/4 of the entire world's economic output came from this single empire. That number is almost impossible to comprehend. But it explains the Taj Mahal. It explains everything. The beginning of the Ind. Then came Aurangzeb, and everything changed. Aurangzeb was Akbar's opposite in almost every way. He imprisoned his own father, Shah Jahan, the same father who had built the Taj Mahal and took the throne by force. He was a strict, austere, deeply religious man who believed the empire had drifted from Islamic principles. He reimposed the jizya tax on non-Muslims. He ordered Hindu temples destroyed and mosques built in their place. He governed according to his interpretation of Islamic law, dismissing music from his court, banning celebrations, rejecting the tolerance that had made the empire great. Also expanded the empire to its absolute largest size, but in doing so, stretched it beyond what any government could manage. He fought endless wars in the south against the Marathas, wars that drained the treasury for decades without producing lasting victories. He died in 1707 at 88 years old. He had ruled for nearly 50 years. He had turned a beloved empire into a deeply resented one. After his death, it fell apart with shocking speed. The Siolali Sea regional governors declared independence. Persian invaders under Nader Shah sacked Delhi in 1739 and carried away the peacock throne, the most famous symbol of Mughal wealth, to Iran, where it never returned. Afghan invaders followed, then Maratha armies. Then, most fatally, the British East India Company. The British had arrived in India as traders in the early 1600s, during Akbar's time, small and polite and entirely unthreatening. Over the following century and a half, as the Mughal Empire weakened, the company grew. It raised private armies. It made alliances with regional powers. It fought wars. It won them. By the mid-1700s, the company effectively controlled large parts of India. By 1857, the year of the great uprising against British rule, the last Mughal emperor was Bahadur Shah Zafar, an old man and poet with no real power, sitting in a palace in Delhi surrounded by a world that had moved entirely beyond him. When the uprising failed, the British arrested him. He was tried for treason. He was exiled to Rangoon, modern Yangon, in Myanmar, where he died in 1862 in a small house far from everything he had known. He was buried there, in unmarked ground. His last poems asked only for 2 yards of earth in his beloved Delhi. He never got even that. The LEGAC. We, the Mughal Empire, is gone, but its presence is everywhere in South Asia. The food you eat. Biryani, kebabs, naan, korma, halim, all products of Mughal court cuisine that filtered down through centuries into everyday life. The language you speak. Urdu, the national language of Pakistan, is essentially a Mughal creation, a blend of Persian, Arabic, and local languages that grew from the multicultural Mughal court. Hindi carries the same heritage. Hundreds of millions of people speak. Languages shaped directly by Mughal cultural influence. The architecture you admire. Not just the Taj Mahal, though that alone would be enough, but the Red Fort, the Badshahi Mosque in Lahore, the Shalimar Gardens. Dozens of monuments across the subcontinent that draw millions of visitors every year. The very idea of South Asia as a unified cultural and political space was largely a Mughal creation. The boundaries that became British India, and then India and Pakistan, followed the rough shape of the Mughal Empire. 300 years. An entire subcontinent. A legacy that over 1 billion people carry in their food, their language, their architecture, their identity. The Mughals did not just rule South Asia. They made it what it is.